participate in this academic change. I'm sure this will be an amazing academic experience for our university, for our faculty. You have been with us some minutes ago. And the graduate program for the teacher. Thank you for all the information. Have your colleague, another them. We also have students, some of them with a bachelor degree and others from master and PhD. So everything is things like a questions or we can have a exchange with them. And well, as you know, Dr. Ishiyama will speak about the challenges that surrounding our discipline and all of the science in these uncertain times. No? This space, I think, is a great opportunity to build a dialogue between our community in the context of the process of the in how we should face the teaching, learning, not only in society, and that is increasingly inclined toward the artificial intelligence, for example. Also, when democratic theories group like conservative group. So just a little lines about Dr. Ishiyama. Very deeply to have it here. He works in comparative politics, in democratization and political parties, in South America, in Russian, European, Russian, and African, especially in Europe. Ethnic conflicts and ethnic politics. Of course, the scholarship of teaching and learning in topic. He was president of the American Political Science Institute, was the editor in chief of the American Political Science Review, and well, he has a lot of work in this topic. And well, I think you have a super amazing things you have made, but well, you received more than 50 awards and recognition, including universities, professors in Ortega and in a lot of. And
you mind if I stand up and walk around?
no.
Thank you so very much for having me today. Talking with you, I've talked with a few faculty and other people, and it seems like you're in the midst of really big change. So my title is Whether Political Science in an Uncertain World, Challenges, Trends, and Opportunities. What I do is I look at the entirety of this future of political science as a profession. A few thank yous and a couple of disclaimers. I'll start with thank yous for people who helped me here. It's Dean Carla Ovega, Dr. Luz Maria Cruz Martero, no one away from that. And then Maria Carla. Disclaimers. I made terrible PowerPoint. The absolute word. You tell our students, oh, you should not use too many words. You should have graphs and pictures, color, none of that. Too many words. I read off my slides. I have no pictures and no color. I read off my slides because these are actually my notes. I think it helps to keep track of what I'm saying. I'm also not sure I can really answer the question that I posed in the title. There's no crystal ball for our future. There's no roadmap towards this future. I have no ability to point to predict and say exactly where we are going. So I contradict the title of my presentation. Rather, what I'm going to present are some things that we should think about as our discipline moves forward toward this uncertain future. What are the challenges facing our discipline currently? Not only for research, but for teaching. I focus a lot on teaching because I think that has been relatively ignored in our the trends and the prospects for the future. Now, I should talk about the entirety of the discipline because I've been doing this for a lot of years, 36 years. And I've been in the leadership of the American Political Science Association, the International Political Science Association, and the International Studies Association. By the way, I'm running for vice president. So if you're a member of ISA, please vote for me. We're talking about, as APSA president, I had 2 task force reports. Presidents get to have a task force. I had a rare pleasure of having 2. Usually you get 1, but I ended up doing 2. I don't know why. They asked me again. Okay. One was on reform for U.S. political parties, which is, I do political parties, so looking at U.S. political parties and the problems they're having in comparative perspective. What can be learned from political party organizations and development elsewhere in terms of providing some insight as to how to fix the political parties in the United States. That was one. The other one which I'm going to present today, which is rethinking political science education. Now, both I believe are issues that are important related to democracy, not only in the United States, but the rest of the world. So not only talking about how bad our parties are throughout the world, but also how do you train the next generation of citizens? It's crucial for the development of democracy. So in these precedent-breaking times, it seems appropriate to present something a little different, other than the standard research presentation. I've done that before too. Yeah. Presidents who go and talk about their research and actually nobody cares. You don't really know what you're doing. I'm going to not talk about my research. I want to talk about teaching. What we can do to face a challenge we now face. Yeah, just Dr. Carla mentioned this about me, but a little bit about me. I've been in this business for 36 years. I had a varied career. I used to teach at a small liberal arts teaching institute called Truman State University. It was not a research intensive, not a graduate program. It was undergrad. So that really shaped how I view our profession. And then in 2008, I was recruited to go to the University of North Texas, which is a PhD grant, radically different than what I had been used to my 18 years. Right now, I'm chairperson and head of the department, so I also get to see all the headaches associated with running a department. Although my department has only 31 professors, you have what, 400? I was telling Dr. Carson, the head of the department is like herding a cat. Professors are like cats. Their own thing, they don't listen to what you need to do. A constant battle. But you know, I kind of enjoy it. 9 years as editor-in-chief of the APSA Journal of Political Science and Safety. I like the importance of teaching and learning in our profession. And then I became editor-in-chief of the American Political Science Review. Well, some say the top political science. I also have had leadership positions in the International Studies Association and IPSA. I'm on the executive committee and chair of the publications committee for IPSA. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I'm coming down here, because Yuko Kasuya, who is current president, asked me, could you do this for me? And I said, okay, because I live closer to Mexico than she does. She's from Cuba. And I was president of the APSA from 21. Today's talk is really based a lot on what was part of the Rethinking Political Science Education. And in that, we talk about challenges facing our discipline, trends in the field, the need to refocus teaching and learning and what can be done. By the way, if you're familiar with Lenin, that was the title of one of his works. What is to be done? I always use that. But I think that's a good title. What is to be done? Our discipline faces many challenges. Most immediately, the past years have witnessed social unrest, major conflict and wars, and a pandemic that has wreaked havoc across the globe. The pandemic itself has raised many challenges, but challenges have caused us to rethink many aspects of what we do. They're changed a lot. Suddenly, this, by the way, I had never heard of Zoom before the pandemic. Now it's part of our vocabulary, part of what we do. In fact, students were in class online and didn't have to attend class. There are repercussions to that because they still don't attend. Things changed as a result of COVID. An entire generation was lost. We will feel the effects of COVID for decades. An entire generation did not get exposed to the basic education that they need. Times like these have caused us to think, rethink about everything, how we run our conference, how we interact as colleagues. Before we would have committee meetings where we had face-to-face discussions. We no longer have it. All of our committee meetings are now in Zoom. It doesn't change the dynamic of how we interact with each other. How we publish and make our research consumable to a broader public, which is now a demand. No longer can we just simply write our books and articles and that other handful of other scholars will do. Demand is making our discipline and what we do relevant to others. How do we help to strengthen and protect the democracies in which we live? And for me, most importantly, COVID pandemic affected how we. At the same time, we are facing, and I'm sure you're facing this. You're facing a number of existential questions. What are we for? What do we do? This is from our policymakers, our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. The question is, why should political science exist? They want to defund us because we have no useful purpose in the eyes of particular. And by parents and students who wonder what we can offer them to build their futures. As we recruit students to our majors, we have to answer the question, what can we do for their kids? They learn that will help them in their career. Now, we really have never had to ask that question before. I mean, when I was a student, no one ever asked why political science should naturally be assumed. We never questioned our existence. Now we are facing these questions. Now, there are also trends in our discipline I think you can pay attention to. It is not a collectively exhaustive work. There is a growing internationalization of the discipline. Questioning of the subfield boundaries that were devised a century ago based upon simple geographic division. For example, in the United States, I have most of my experience in people with trade in the United States. We have a subfield called American politics, comparative politics, international relations, and political theory. Why do those subfields exist? The reason is because they were geographically convenient. They have no substantive meaning other than American politics studies the United States. Comparative politics studies the politics and everything outside the United States. International relations is relations between countries. Other than that, what does it tell you? We are organized along principles based in the early 20th century, not now. This is actually, in my view, irrelevant. We cling to this. I think we really have to rethink our subfield. Rather, maybe it would be useful to think about, instead of these subfield divisions, having areas of concentration like on conflict. Conflict happens between countries, but they also happen within countries. Or perhaps political economy, which is comparative and international. Or perhaps political behavior or institutions, reorganizing our discipline. Face challenges we face now and explain to our students why they are useful. This is useful. Studying political behavior is useful. It's hard for me to explain to my students what comparative politics means. There's no longer the clean division, and are these divisions even useful? Political theory and political thought have become more important. because there's been a move away from the study of dead white guys. Or just, well, now that's what we go. We have ancient machines. You should know that. Yeah, we get important though. Dead white guys is not relevant for most of our students. You know, it isn't. And I think what we're moving toward is a much more contemporary field, much more non-Western people. And also much more emphasis on applied, not just thinking great thoughts, but what can our students do with these ideas? These are essential to democracy and democratic debate. There's a growing unity of methodological approaches in the discipline. This is from my friend David Layden, who's been saying this for a long time. And, we say like these methodological, we still do, these methodological debates, quantitative versus qualitative versus formal. That's ridiculous. Those arguments are not, shouldn't even exist. It's like debating on which hammer is best for you. Why should we have to debate on tools? These are tools. Tools are meant to be used and are used for different situations. We need to show our students that these methodological debates are skills. What they should know are there are various tools they can use for the questions they want to ask. Sometimes you use quantitative tools. Sometimes you use qualitative tools. Sometimes if you are in theoretical physics, you should use formal modeling. I think students need to know that these methods of debates are silly. And that they should understand there are multiple tools they can use toolbox for whatever question that they seek. There's a growing importance of studying diversity. The world has become much more diverse. The impact it has on politics in an increasingly multicultural world has not always been confident. We can see by the blowback of rising tide of the far right. Growing importance, in my view, also studying, teaching, and student learning. There's support from political leaders and claim for basic research in political science in the United States, where the National Science Foundation defunded research for political science. Actually, they renamed it Research for National Security and Economic Development, but no more funds for basic research. However, the very people who assailed political science also call for improved civic engagement and citizenship education. From which I think they know what it needs. Talk about it. As I long argued, as a discipline, we need to focus on teaching and learning. What we do best is acquiring basic knowledge. That's what I do. I learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I do research. I learn it. So makes us most relevant is imparting that knowledge to others. I love doing research. I love writing books. I love writing articles. But I think it's important to also say that I'm collecting this knowledge so I can teach others, not just for myself and my people. But we have the greatest impact, in my view, as scholars on a daily basis is imparting knowledge and teaching. So, I argue we need to refocus on teaching learning now more than ever before. There is a great need to re-engage citizens in the democratic process. Politicians may not like our discipline, but they do realize the lack of civic engagement is a problem of national, if not international, significance. Disengaged populations are not good for any system. For egalitarian dictatorship like North Korea, but even then they require some engagement in some. Promoting civic engagement and civic education has widespread global support, but we have not as a discipline embraced it in scholarly activity. But I think this is changing. Author McCarthy and Simpson, which examined how teaching civic engagement is not just in the United States but throughout the world. They had chapters on India, chapters on the Russian Federation, chapters on China, chapters on Vietnam. Even in regimes that are not necessarily democratic, there is move to promote a civically engaged. Some of the difference. There is a new world technology that we face, where we are only beginning to understand what works and what does not work in terms of pedagogy in an online environment. How do you teach civic engagement when you're not teaching students? There's also the challenge of ChatGPT and AI, which, by the way, this presidential task force report that I referred to is 2023. Four. ChatGPT is there. After hitting the earth. AI affects every aspect of our profession, especially research, publications, teaching in the classroom. It has radically altered what we can assign to students. By the way, gone are the days of assigning a research paper without particular guidance. You can say, oh, do a research paper on this topic, and write and use the AI. And by the way, our detection tools that we often use, like turn-it-in variation and others, they don't work. They cannot detect AI, or their range of error is so high, they're not run. Radically alters the way to cultivate the skills we seek to develop in our students. So if we want to cultivate skills like civic engagement or critical thinking, how do you do that when your students are using ChatGPT to write their assignments? In many ways, it has fundamentally altered the way we teach. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. It's not hopeless, but I think we have to acknowledge that AI is here to stay and that we're going to have to deal with it. Unlike some of my older senior colleagues who say, oh, we'll just ignore it and just don't do it and it'll go away. That's not going to happen. Also, in the era of assessment and accountability in higher education, it, by the way, has widespread public support. And we should be able to show the public what we are doing. Demonstrate our students are actually learning the skills we say they are learning. And before we can say, oh, just trust me, they're learning it because I'm the expert. That's not going to work anymore. We are accountable to governing agencies and the government, and we have to show that what we say we're doing, we are doing. This is the era of assessment. And we need to show that what we do in the classroom, we will no longer be saying, trust me, they do learn because I don't. That won't work anymore. By the way, that doesn't work anywhere. I mean, in terms of any standard of evidence, just to say, trust me, it's working, who would accept that? I mean, I wouldn't accept that as part of my research project. I would not expect that when I'm reviewing an article, that their answer is trust me, is working. So this is catching up to us. Finally, is simply, this is what I believe why we got to pay attention to teaching. It is simply what we're supposed to be doing. I really do think that this artificial separation between teaching and research is false. Always believe that we go hand in hand. Because if you do research and cannot teach, what is the point? Accumulate knowledge that you never maybe the 5 other people who follow your work. Maybe 60. But if you teach and you don't do any research, then what is it you're teaching? What do you know? You're just repeating what you see in the textbook? No one knows what is. Two have always gone hand in hand. And gone are the days you can say, I am a researcher, not a teacher, or I am a teacher, not a researcher. Starting out with the profession, that's how people define themselves. No longer be the case. So what can be done? Many ways of teaching of political science is more important now than ever before, not least because we teach skills that produce competent leaders. Someone asked me, what do political scientists do? And I had to think about that. And a colleague of mine wrote an article in the Journal of Political Science. What we do? Not everyone can be a leader, but we teach that. For example, the skills we do, like critical thinking, problem solving, writing, speaking. My brother writes, he's an engineer. And, engineers don't learn any of this stuff. And so now he's vice president of this company. And we talk, and he said, no, John, I wish I knew what you do. But I have to write a report. I have to persuade the board to accept their report. I have to manage people. I have to speak in front of a crowd. He learned none of that as an engineer. Now we need to know that. But now he's a leader. It doesn't matter what profession you're in. Try to leadership position, need these skills. And I frankly believe with the science as a discipline is best equipped to provide those skills. We just don't know. We don't tell them that. Students know or should know how to diagnose, analyze a problem. Why is something happening? What is the root of that problem? You come up with plans based on evidence to solve that problem. Mobilize support for their initiatives and actions, and to use ethical insights to guide the use of power to achieve those desired ends. Recognizing that. And prepare about it. That's what I do. Is I say, why is there a war? Why is there an election result? Or why is there a revolution or a coup? And then figuring out, well, what's wrong? That's what we do. And then trying to figure out, how do you solve it? How do you produce the likely institutional solutions like maybe association, which I don't really work with. This is what we do. And then to mobilize support for initiative and action. This is how do you overcome the collective action problem. Not mobilizing support. These are things we teach. And finally, lesson is more related to political philosophy. And he is using ethics. How do you how ethics is the right? We hear what our students know. We know all these things. Problems we don't tell them that. They get these skills, but when they come out, they say, "Oh, I have no skills." Look at that engineering student, or that nursing student, or that other doctor. They have skills. I have. You and skills that let them rise to the top of their profession, whatever. These skills are needed now at all levels of society, not just government, but also the private sector, the nonprofit sector. The teaching of political science at the undergraduate and graduate level is now more than ever, especially on how we structure and organize our educational programs. Anyway, our major, our programs are not organized. We still organize based upon subfield, or the students take the classes in theory of politics and miraculously don't learn from. We don't organize our curriculum based upon doing this stuff. I'm not saying that everybody. We know, you all know. The focus of this presidential task force was on rethinking political science education. So why do we need to rethink political science education? The report talks about this, and if you're interested, it's online, it's free. You can download it or PDF. To the product for distribution. But political science educators, we face several challenges. Now, I don't know about in Mexico, but in Europe, United States, enrollments in political science have declined significantly. Patterns of enrollments have also changed. We've been shifting away from, at least in the United States, from smaller little large colleges like Dartmouth, et cetera, to big public universities like the University of Montana. Because we're cheaper, we have more fun things to do than small colleges. So many students are moving from smaller universities to bigger ones. The demographic characteristics of our students have changed. They are not the same as they were 25 years ago. They're more diverse. In the United States, the students are also often adult learners, meaning they're older. There are more women. There are more veterans. The composition of our students 25 years ago were primarily 18 to 22-year-old students from suburban white communities. That is no longer the case. Also in the United States, we have a demographic cliff that we're reaching at. That population of suburban white students is declining dramatically. The universities are competing for them now. Not survive, they rely only on suburban white. There's also greater demand for employable skills, rightly so. I mean, we never faced this question. What can I do with my degree? What job can I get? Usually they go to get a degree in what? Now, students and their parents, when they come, they ask, why should I be a major in political science? They are asking, what can my son or daughter do with it once they graduate? What other career paths they have? We never had, my son needs a doctor. Go to medical school, you become a doctor. The nursing school, you become a nurse. You go to business and you become a businessman. You go to computer science and you become a computer. Take political science, what do you become? But then they'll say, well, you get political, become a political science, what does that mean? That's not a good answer. You know, actually, my mother used to ask me this. You have political science major. What are you going to do with that? What are you doing? Are you going to be a politician or a lawyer? Neither of which are a desirable career path. Can't say that to my. Oh yes, you're going to become a politician or a lawyer. That's not really something that's desirable. So, but that is the question: what do they become? You've not really thought about this. We're justify our existence, but now we're understated. We're under some of it. Maybe I hope it's not too. These are kind of fundamental questions we have to think about. There's also an increased need for civic education, and civic education is demonstrated by the political crises of the past year. I mean, one thing that really upsets me that it's something that we have political leaders like the one unnamed senator from the great state of Mississippi thought there was only one branch of government. Yeah. There was it's common. It's common time for. He's a football coach at Auburn, and then the visitor, they asked him about basic civics, and he was knowing the answer. Now he's a U.S. senator. Because it's true for many of our colleges. They don't know basic stuff, and that's a failure of our education system. Our leaders are utterly ignorant of our political system, let alone knowing anything about the world, as witnessed by our president. Students are not prepared to be engaged citizens in a democracy, and we may not producing PhDs who can teach them. Part of this report is not only rethinking undergraduate education, but what can we do to rethink graduate education? How do we train our professors to be able to teach the things that are truly needed? I certainly wasn't taught that, right? Focus my education on democratization in Estonia and Latvia. Yeah, like you, if 5 people read it, then actually doesn't do much for the rest of the population. Enrollments have declined. I like using data, and this is from the United States, not from the rest of the world. The United States, based upon the National Center for Educational Statistics, the number of bachelor's degrees awarded to political science has declined significantly. It was about 40,000 per year in 2011, 2012. It is about 30,000 currently. That's significantly less than it was a little over a decade. Only of all bachelor's degrees awarded in the field, of all bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States, only 1.77% are political science. It used to be 3 times that. More recent data from the American Political Science Association suggests that these enrollments have the decline has stopped, but they flattened. They're still lower, much lower than they were, but they flattened. There has been a reallocation of students where a larger proportion of students now attend very large state institutions with very large class sizes and a very large online presence. They're no longer sitting in classrooms. They're sitting at home watching or watching recordings of classes. Further, an increasing number of students are going online or hybrid programs rather than a traditional brick and mortar. So they're not coming and sitting in our classroom. That's the reality. That changes a lot of what we do. The demographic characteristics of students in the United States has changed. The NCES estimates that in 2025, women now outnumber men in enrollment by 11.3 million to 8.4. Many more women are now there. African American enrollment has increased by 25%. Hispanic Latino enrollment has increased to 34% of our undergraduates. Especially the latter, the fastest growing demographic in the country. There are significantly more older students with increases in both the 25 to 34 and 35 and above. These are students who are coming back to university after perhaps getting a job, or perhaps they were enrolled in the military and now better. There are increases in the proportion of students who are first generation college. First generation college is that neither of their parents went to college. Or we could rely on a steady flow of students, parents went to college, and white suburban community that is no longer the case. University of North Texas now has 65% of students. They've never been, their parents were never college, and their parents can't help them. It's a big challenge for us. However, our curricula both in the United States, both undergrad and graduate, is still based on the assumption a large cohort of majority white, middle class, young and male. That's how it's designed. But that is far obsolete. There's also, again, rising demand for employable skills, although there's been coming by some emphasis on practical skills, like we call them STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, and math. There has also been an emphasis on skills that have been associated with liberal education. Meaning, I'm not liberal politically, liberal political education. Or being able to critically think. By the way, critical thinking does not mean to criticize everything. Some people think critical thinking means criticize everything. That's not what critical thinking means. Give a student to rethink what they believe. To protect your own beliefs in light of new evidence. That's critical thinking. And that is an absolutely essential skill for every adult. That they're not just stuck in their beliefs, which may be wrong. For instance, in the United States National Association of Colleges and Employers, they do a survey every year about what employers and from human resources officers are looking for when they're hiring people. And they consistently point to what they call career readiness. But they don't define career readiness as having a bachelor's degree in business or being able to do accounting. They don't count that. Or being able to design cars. Career readiness is this. This is what employers are looking for, because most employers don't train you the technical stuff. They're training for you the technical aspect. They don't really want someone who's already technically trained, because they're probably technically trained wrong. They'll have to completely retrain. Employers are looking for it. I'm not sure it's any different elsewhere in the world, given that the world is becoming increasingly globalized. They look for critical thinking and problem solving. They want employees who can be faced with an open-ended question and be able to come up with a solution. They want people who can speak and who can write. I don't think that's too high a bar. I mean, I sometimes look at what my students are doing. They can't speak in front of more than one person, and their writing is horrendous. I mean, they're very nice students. They speak up in class and they just go. But you read an essay, and I go, "What the heck are you writing? What is it?" Or they have one sentence that's a whole page long. They don't know how to communicate. Another one they emphasize is students or employees must learn how to work with others. Teamwork and collaboration. They have to learn how to work with others they don't know. I don't know about your students, but my students hate group work. They do. They think, oh, I'm going to somebody free writing and I'm going to work with you. That's too bad. That's the world. Employers are looking for you to demonstrate that you know how to work in a group and produce a project. How do you deal with free writing? That's your challenge. How do you make it work? They look for digital technology and information literacy. This is important because in the era of AI, our students should be able to tell the difference between good and bad information because their job depends on it. Right? They cannot be feeding the boss lies. That won't keep them their job. Right? It'll make the boss look bad. And that, I think, becomes even more important in the era of AI. They need to develop leadership skills. But in the long run, whenever a company hires somebody, HR, they're looking for leaders. Employees can get off. another computer science major or another business major. Maybe they're good employees and they stay at the same salary. It's not really what they're looking for talent that could rise to the top and bring innovative ideas to forward the vision of the community. They look for professionalism and work ethic. Meaning that you should interact with people professionally, not sort of tantrum. You're confronted with counter idea, or that you can't take criticism. This is one thing I tell my graduate students all the time, that mark of a good graduate student is someone who can take criticism. Because you're going to be criticized your entire life. You're going to be criticized in class. You're going to be criticized when you take a comprehensive exam. You're going to be criticized when you write your dissertation. You're going to be criticized by the reviewers who review your book or article. And your whole career is full of criticism. So if you can't take criticism, develop a thicker skin, because then you're in the wrong field. And one thing I think our students don't have, partially is they don't, part because of COVID, you lack some degree of persistence. They when they're faced with challenges, they often collapse. That's a skill that they don't collect. That they can persist. We have to help them develop that skill. Career management, they should be thinking about their future. It's not like, oh, finally I got a job. I mean, like my daughter, I like to talk about my kids. One second daughter, she got a job with the Dallas Cowboys. This is a pretty big job. She's in communications, she does her online the producer, right? The boss said, what do you plan on doing in 5 years? She said, I'm going to stay where I am. The show is like, no, you don't stay there. Because they're asking that for a reason. You want to see how you might contribute to how is an organization in the future. I think our students don't often think about about tomorrow. And after they get a job, and they have to be know something about the world. We do. A lot of my students at our university, they've never left North Texas. They've never left Dallas, let alone the state or the country. They've never been outside it, so they don't know the world. That puts them at a huge disadvantage when they're competing with others who do know. And it's not just knowing language. To deal with others who are very different. What these employers are looking for. And we want our students to be able to demonstrate that they have these skills. Political science emphasizes many of these competencies, but other aspects for career preparation are largely missing from many programs. Students will be developing. They'll be asking them, how do I know I have? One thing, we have the long talks in the American Political Science Association. We all agree that we already do these things. We know we do these things. We know we develop these skills. When our students don't, we're terrible at communicating. When they graduate from my university, they're standing in line and they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Well, maybe I have to get a job at a fast food restaurant. They have skills they don't know about. We have to show them that they have these skills and how they are useful. That's why I use my brother as an example all the time. Look, he's vice president of this company. He said he wishes he was a political writer. And there's a need for improving civic education and promotion of civic engagement. People in the United States in particular know less and less about their system, let alone the world. The Edinburgh Constitution Day Civic Study, they do this like every 5 years, but 2017, more than a third of those surveyed could not name any of the rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. Only a quarter could name all 3 branches of government. 33% could not name any of the crimes, including one of our current sitting senators. There was hope, however, because the subsequent one that was conducted in 2020, and there was some improvement. There's going to be another one coming out. Senators could not name any of the rights guaranteed from the First Amendment fell from 37% to 19%. Now, we think that's a Trump effect, first administration. People suddenly became interested in politics again. Many of my biology colleagues in my university were so shocked by 2016. How did this happen? Explain this to me. And what's going to happen to my grant? The same survey in 2023, the percent who could not name any branch of government has declined to 26% from 33%. There has been a renewed interest in politics to try to figure out what is going on in the world. So it's not that we don't have students out there who are interested. They're not coming to us. Some of our other coworkers, history, anthropology, indicating their field. We're faced with competition from competitor disciplines. Now, rediscovery of civic and political engagement is now a goal of forming the political science curriculum. Colleges and universities now recognize that quality civic education to foster the redevelopment of a knowledgeable, capable, informed citizenry is now the priority in facing higher education. The more research on civic engagement and more effective ways to promote it, not only here or not only in the United States, not here, but also everywhere else. But I think there's a problem that's a global problem, not particularly American. We need this now more than ever. It should be, in my opinion, our focus on rethinking the purpose of our discipline, how we structure our baby. Now, of course, this is not new. This effort was built upon the efforts of others, and I recognize that my predecessors, Roger Smith, Paul McLean, Jan von Stettentmeyer, and also since 2019, APSA has grant funded a team that worked on getting out to. And the APSA led the APSA Presidential Task Force on Rethinking Political Science Education. The purpose of the task force was to identify those skills that we want our students to know and the basic knowledge they should have once they graduate with the job. The APSA thing, there's an association. This is what we think about. Now, how you exactly do it depends upon the university. We're not going to impose it on every university. That's what we're going to call it. The things we think are critical as part of being a political scientist that you can do it as you see fit. This is the report. Curious that the link. And share the PowerPoint me all you want. And then you can take a look at it. Not very long, it's about 50 pages. And it deals with both undergraduate and graduate education. Now we can rethink our graduate program to reach the teachers and the scholars who help our students learn these skills. Now, this is our vision statement from the political science aimed at turning politically interested and concerned students, their career plans or other interests, into politically literate college graduates. It equips them to comprehend and engage with their political world after graduation in order to succeed in a wide variety of careers and professions in the public. In addition, the political science major prepares students to become actively engaged citizens in their community. That was the vision. It's pretty broad, but vision statements are always pretty broad. You actually implement this depends upon the university. What is to be done? We need to assess and reaffirm the value of political science degrees, especially in undergraduate and graduate political science and how our facing challenging or changing and uncertain job market. This involves assessment. We need to provide evidence to be made public that our programs do what we say. Task force identify critical skills and knowledge that students should know. So undergraduates learn these things, and graduate students can teach these things. There's a whole list in the report. These are, and especially in the first section, these are the skills and these are basic knowledge. Key part of the project is promoting a discipline-wide discussion. Not meant to say everyone should do the same thing. The key point is that every department is going to have a discussion of what they think their students should know. And this is very from university to university, from country to country, from state to state. The conversation should be held on what we think our students should know they graduate career from our university. They need to have these skills that are usable and prepare them for being an engaged citizen in a democracy. They need to learn about tolerance and diversity of many points of view, because this is the bedrock of online. It's pretty young. You need to understand that their country, meaning the United States, and I usually pitch this to most universities in the United States, has made many mistakes, and there has been much injustice, and that we are able to learn from those mistakes and correct them. On the other hand, what has happened is we should not be spoon-fed a version of their history where nothing went wrong and everything was heroic. This is not a history for democracy. This is what autocrat. This is fight that. We need to pay attention to the challenges and opportunities presented by AI. AI promotes academic dishonesty. It does. Our students cheat. Our scholars cheat. Have their articles written by AI. Some of them, when they do a journal review, use AI to write the review. Student cheat is very great. It's also much more difficult to engage in assessment of student learning. Because what are you assessing? What the student is learning or what AI is producing? Much more difficult to encourage reading. Why should students read when they can have something do it for them? Although I would say something that people forget. I don't know if it was here in Mexico, but when I was young, they had something called Cliff Notes. Cliff Notes were summaries of books that you could buy at the bookstore, little yellow pamphlets. And they would summarize the basics of art. It was widely used, and people learned it. They may have not read the original, but they read the summary and actually learned something. So, I don't think it has totally bad. It summarize a very long piece. Of course, whether or not AI does it accurately, that is a different issue. That way, I see AI in action as being somewhat of a positive thing. It's much more difficult for students to see the value of learning when a artificial intelligence can do it for you. It becomes more why you're a major, what are you learning, and what can you do with it that AI cannot do? AI will not go away. Some of my older colleagues say, "Oh, we'll just ignore it, and it will disappear." Here for the foreseeable future. I would like to mention that the APSA, the American Political Science Association, is launching a task force under the past president, Hickory Lee, Harvard University, which is entitled AI and Political Science. It's meant to be sort of a task force that addresses all these issues with AI. I'm on that task force. Let me ask you, like the salary with huge responsibility with this stuff, trying to figure out, and especially from teaching and learning, what can you do with AI? How do we address it as a discipline? It's supposed to be released in sometime next year, I guess. I think it's the association to tackle setting guidelines for AI use for publication research. As far as our role as educators, what can we do? We need to acknowledge that AI is a tool, not a link. Students, and I follow this that in business administration, there's some literature that suggests that what has emerged recently is that students have become knowledge entrepreneurs. What that means is that, the old model where they would come to class, we would impart our knowledge onto them, as if we were sponges soaking up what we did. There's so much information now available online, YouTube, Twitter. They can look up AI and something fun. There's so much information out there. And really, they're not looking at us. That's why they don't look at us. We don't look at you. But they can find it in the world encyclopedia, including the one that Elon Musk is now creating. It's Rocket, I don't know Rocket. Wikipedia, because you think Wikipedia is gold. It's ridiculous. But these students have lots of sources of information. They don't need to come to class and listen to us impart knowledge on them, because they're going to look it up myself. I learned this from my daughter, my youngest daughter, who kept, her source of information was not from you. I did nothing, so she got it all from TikTok, Twitter. That's how she got her information. It's like, I said, honey, how do you know that's true? Well, from mine. That's true. That's what our students think about it. So, we need to move away. We need to make an effort to help our students become information literate, knowledge entrepreneurs, meaning they're able to understand what is good information and bad information. We need to help them develop skills to discern the information they're consuming. This information environment becomes even more dense with the advent of AI. By the way, I was not trained when I got my PhD how to promote information literacy. On the other hand, librarians have their own development of information. So I've been asking them. There are other disciplines that have talked about information. I also think the solution is interdisciplinary. We need to move away from being providers of knowledge, become guides. How do they navigate this information? How do they can tell what's good and bad information? We need to acknowledge that AI can also be an important teaching tool. For example, this is not this is what I speak to. I will assign students an AI project. Go do it. Go use AI and come up with a project. Now, that does one thing. They learn how to use it. They learn how to use I don't know how to use it, but they do. They go find like the app. Yeah, they learn how to use it. They hand it in, and then I have them check the references from their actions. What AI does is they self-reference. There's few things that are completely empty, and I have to check. Oh, check the references and see if they exist, and if they do exist, it is being represented in the accurate way in the report. So this does two things. It shows the students how to use it, but also how to identify misinformation. Using it as a teaching tool. Then can't keep them from using it, but one thing about students is that you don't want to be caught and embarrassed. They could, everything is reviewed, everything is written off, right? So what if they did an AI class? Robert Kennedy issued a report. Our Secretary of Health, which was entirely written by AI. They checked it, none of the references were accurate, and said exactly the opposite of what. A huge embarrassment. I guess he doesn't care about it. Our students care. Who care about being embarrassed? And so capitalize on it. The other thing is that all the software that's meant to be detect the AI, they're not useful. They're not accurate. So what IPSA, the International Political Science Association, it's a publication about acknowledging ahead of time that you use AI and how. So in other words, if you by the way, mental aid, or one that checks your grammar. That's an AI generated tool, but that you are upfront and transparent in saying how you use AI. Also, that there is a group for becoming very explicit about what do you use AI, how do you use AI, and that kind of material. You're not going to be cheaters, right? Everybody cheater to cheat. You can't prevent cheaters. But if you have people who for others, make them think that there's a remote possibility they could get caught as a deterrent. I think that's the best we can do now, is providing deterrence for using it in negative ways. I think that's the best we can do now. Now, of course, you're not going to catch everybody. The cheaters will cheat, regardless. But I don't believe that the majority of the population is unethical. I also think some students, they just don't know. You make them say up front that I use AI, I use it in this way, and also tell them what are unacceptable ways to use it, that they learn. So that's what we do. We're just sort of scratching the surface. Also AI evolves. There could be something else that comes down the road that more than that. In sum, we as a discipline face many challenges in this uncertain world We are, however, also at a transformative moment. There are always opportunities in crisis. We have a rare opportunity to rethink what we do, define what we do as teachers in scholar. As my predecessor asked Dan Bach-Steffenmeyer in her presidential address, stated that we are at the cusp, and this was at the end of COVID. She said we are at the cusp of a golden age of political science, that we have the skills they need, and that these skills will help grow from the world. We must prepare our students at all levels for this new age. Now, she's more optimistic than me, but I like to quote her because she said, oh, yeah, we're at the new age of political science. And to change the trajectory of democracy. Why is it this one? Because I've been accused of being a naive optimist. But I think we are up to that challenge. I think we're having conversations about what is to be done. Not just throwing up our hands saying, well, I give up. Some do. But I think most of us don't. Well, in my opinion, we are at this definitive moment at the inflection point in our discipline as we face these uncertainties. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very good. And now, thinking a lot of comments, maybe some questions, please. Thank you very much, Professor. It was really interesting and it made me think about my experience as a teacher. I teach first semester political science, introduction to political science, and violence against women. So there are like a lot of things I would like to share. I also have like a lot of questions, and maybe we can have a dialogue between all the professors that we are here. The first thing I was thinking about is that we have like development in political science program that there is less versus is about political theory and philosophy, and that for me is a big problem. Second, we have a thematic logic, like there's great approaches, but they are like mainstream. And one of the things that is really important for me is that nowadays, with the feminist theory, we're talking right now about epistemic injustice, violence, because we have a lot of that. And sometimes I analyze, we have like some colleagues that they don't see teaching as a responsibility. Yeah? Like a vocation, thinking about Weber, what he said, right? And I think we need first to question these biases that we have in political science. Mm-hmm. And also, I've been thinking a lot about feminism and power, and I always tell my students that the way we understand power is how we relate with each other. We think about power in an authoritarian way, a hierarchical way. It's not the same as we take power and its relations in a democratic way. But that makes me think about how are we supposed as teachers to expect that our students are ethics. They are not when they are teaching, because I have seen that some of the professors, for example, they do not let students participate. Like they go to their class, they talk like 2 hours, and they don't care what their students think, right? So how are we supposed to connect theory with practice, with their everyday practice? And you make me also think about emotional intelligence. We don't talk about that. I know it's not our responsibility as teachers to show that, but if we're speaking about ethics, I think we should think about emotional intelligence. There is something really in your background that in our in political science we are divided like in two parts. You have your degrees in political science and public administration, but in the last years we have seen that a lot of our students take the option for studying public administration. And what they tell us why they are doing that is because we're not gonna get jobs if we study political science. And I'm like, you're not getting a job, whatever. But how will you discuss real and happen? Because, um, um, about things that my students take and that's a big problem we're having. So that I think that you make me think of something, but it was amazing. So I wanted to share that. Okay.
Like an extended one. Not for being dramatic, for looking at the different one. Easy long experience. And you know, no life things. We take it from and that's what I'm thinking with the application. And that's why I want to do it. For me, it's pretty much really, so Western, in Korea, unfold. And I think we do not, like we both, me is I, when they develop democracy and how modernity wants. It, that, and everything, now they get paid, so yeah, they develop, healing, that one, lot is greater. Like, oh, what's going on? The liberal problem. The time without the line population, the idea of the not being failed is because it's good. So the same goes on to the great and being. It's simply one of the things that it's moving forward. And maybe I'm one time we have a and the other well, And, things that Hey, well, thank you very much for these questions and comments. And I agree that we are in crisis because we're seeing the day. Um, we do believe that there is a way to count it. Our church and everything that we can. Well, previously. So we have in that. They don't keep the church and nothing. There has been called like some sort of previous bad. And I think basic idea of theory, what is the nature of tension? And is conflict nervous? Or is there something different and we can deal with? I think you learn from insights of some so or I think it's important to know that those colonial periods based upon something that happened long ago. It cannot be projected. It cannot be simple. Fortunately, some kind of degeneration of some nice check, sorry, in privatization. Yeah, mainstream is not. The terminology mainstream is not. The mainstream, one was not. Was not as a term mainstream versus not. Yeah, I agree. No, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, well, I think that we have to change, but in flipping say, it's going to generation doesn't. That confidence in me. Into, my case, usually people say everything. So, let's sit about it. Yes, these students agree, but you don't understand. You're not going to do it. You know, I see it. Let's go to the teaching of civilized. Not just be from sentences. Also, some of your colleagues who burn like cold water to start. I don't understand. You know, they seem like the John is burning, not substance. No, yeah. So I'm happy that he'll become the client actually. I tell them, I'm not very smart. You have to go down and be too. Go down. Sense. And we're from important. That's not your lecture, but no. Right. You said the article that he discovered, but you don't say what I said. And then scale to pity because right now, like you can't work. Why would you be done? Like not people reading it. I don't know. So there's some journal specialized in verbiage. And these we call that option. From the function time of one being. And you can go to about they turn down. Yeah. Something. So, are you going to read this? Sorry, this was fine like this. It's so before I am telling you, what this credit. How they rattle the churches. I think they're trying to push on it. Maybe trying to zone 36 years. Think that although it's a good put inside, it's fine. And you have to get everything China. And that so they lost it like and yeah, first year, China they talk about they not had Western talk. Okay, so very influential with the commission China for most of the nation. So political science major then that's not really inflation. It's because of the judges not in changing the one to I think we stay in the Chinese we also I think you want to learn how we can be effectively manage the system. That's true about something about yeah, I think that they tend to think for really island. Yeah, that's not the pleasant thing and I think you cannot reject it. And I think And pretty visual, but and one guy at the bottom, was quality. I think that's great, that's perfect, and you must, get me. But the reality, prize is one thing. No, there are different ways to think outside, you have shooting, really good law. And I think that, the show, they think that, so then you have the narrative side of it. All about, but that's very well. It's not, they, so we come here outside, we can feel us, it's nice. A lot of my natural slides, so. Yeah. Right. I think that, no, because the problem is, yeah. Yeah. Why people do this? Probably think about why they and trying to change that. I went up to the meeting, and for and then back. I think that's how the next kind of time there. Actually, the next thing for granted from biology. Like, why did I go like,
I'm sorry, that was maybe, it sounds sort of like three things, but we just want to be really. That's the thing. I just think about the world has become sort of knowledge. And I am a manager, but I think we're going to not like, it's a friend who works in Chicago. I was kind of about what is so unique. I know the goal is the local firms working with the goal, and the goal is probably creating a very powerful. Now, how are you thinking about some of the cloud? How fails language is something about knowledge. How everything is basically just well once. Like broader, broader more understanding of like knowledge and information. So you mentioned a lot of many important skills in this idea of appreciating knowledge of practical things. I think one dimension of this development of cognitive development, like very like from today's world requires a lot of like thinking with you know, silly and setting however, all these things should be very examples. Second, as you mentioned, I think we're looking for one here with broader question about holistic education. So basically, it's not taking physical science, how political parties, how make people have to like let's understand all of these on the cloud, parallel with some covered last period activities. You know, the digitized source of knowledge. I think it's reflect on like how they need to be into this process. Sorry, innovation. especially theory and political science, they're very important. They don't just be translated from the education reality. So, science, thank you for your presentation. Say first, well, it was patient, master, spot, last word to the activity, the planners for having management position. And then it seemed that most of the things specific class was about some thing the population that is not long ago. So it was you say it's in the next manual forward. This is the way that you don't have right now. So was sharing about one of the skills that we don't have in the master. And it's so like the job is not job. So yes. So then the thing is that we must be nice students. So something about you say that what is more valuable to the participant. So as a parent to the men's something but this right? Then we enforce the plan of proper participation explain the knowledge and then part of that knowledge. So you said that have some personal skills. Need to keep and say the important so we need to do practice the language place. So how we are more it's that it wants
Yeah, here, yeah, I think students are more, I think generally people are less aware of value now. Okay, reading from the trying to think. Now, and they find out the person was looking for a good color.
yeah, yeah.
That's why when I actually I'm studying plants. And they become a kid, we got to get them. They go, so they don't go around leading on their own. So I think it's yeah, understanding education, knowledge to develop. One thing about that the movement made me say that it has they came on the Carnegie company. And how students technically the because they have no recognizing the piece. Because it's good behavior, like learning. Doing the same social science and another. And I think that is the United States one. The Journal of Political Science is published. People recognize that teaching and handing out to the work has value that knowledge development. Keep telling you where we're going. So that's how we think about it. That's really and and also that so the risk of banning or compared to I mean, we are not going to practically do some they're not able to deal with emotional crises. They're not able to deal with things that even question when they only believe. And that's something we have to do. Yeah, 58 years ago, so that's true. It's kind of like, you feel like this is not one of the so we make it. Stage. How okay, and side, original between high and low. Again, I think there is some balance to understanding of the stuff. Because stopping us, here's all the because things that are wrong with that's how that was accumulated. That's not architecture. They have the first thing about it. Then you get this thing about program families. We have a discussion called by theory is not meant to be true. Here's another question. So studies about but also give it something the consequence you got I mean, don't get guessed. Or you learn something. So you discover that practice discussion as an open game. Definitely. And
I want to later and the about the you have to speak. And I want to say thank you. Well, and I would like to thank also your transmission and have it Facebook. Tomorrow we have another development. It's about what skills students can. And also we want to totally know we are here. And well, of course, thank you everyone. We are going to come some them for my house. You think they can say thirty hours. That's it. Okay.